if we look to how you would recruit and how you would advise others to recruit, we've been talking about shift, and you've already mentioned it in terms of that recruiting for now because we're desperate for people, or recruiting for the long term and how we take people on that journey. So we've very much had a conversation about the difference between recruiting for behaviours and values rather than solely recruiting for skills. So can you tell us a bit about that and what the difference is?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I did a recent poll on LinkedIn to see what hiring managers were doing when it comes to interviewing, and whether they are just kind of having general informal conversations with their candidates, or whether they're using a more structured competency-based interview, for example, or whether it's a mix of the two. And a lot of hiring managers are still using kind of informal chats, so a telephone call, a Teams, and then a face-to-face meeting, which is fine. You need to know that the kind of natural personality of a candidate is going to fit well with the team and work well with the management structure, etc. However, I do feel that there's still a place for competency-based interviews in there if you are structuring the questions around an individual's values and their ethics, and how they demonstrate compassion and empathy and resilience, and putting the scenarios in that help draw out those situational circumstances that highlight the value you're looking to recruit for. On paper, someone can have all of the qualifications that you think you need. You could have the highest level in management training, and they've hold every other qualification known to man. However, if they've been in the industry for quite some time, are they disillusioned? Have they become complacent? And if you're not testing those kind of pressure points, you won't know until they're in the business. So there may well be managers or deputies, for example, who haven't got the highest level of qualification, but their passion to really provide the best possible care and service and leadership to your team is absolutely second to none. They just haven't had the support of an employer, or been given the right guidance of what they need to do to be able to progress in their training journey and development journey. So it's absolutely crucial, in my opinion, that there's a nice blend of personal interaction and kind of general chit chat so you can get to understand somebody, but use the competency-based interview questions to really draw out those situational based experiences so you can judge whether those values truly align personally.
Okay, so not to put you on the spot then at all, what kind of questions or what kind of scenario-based example questions would you give? Because I'm totally in agreement with you. If you say to somebody in the care sector, tell me about the 6 C's, they can reel them off because that's what they know, that's what they do, they've gained qualifications. But if you say to somebody, can you give me an example of when you've demonstrated compassion? Somebody can't prepare for that unless they've got a real true example. So you are getting that, I'm all for it. But what kind of questions would you use, or would you advise people to use in that situation?
Brilliant. So it doesn't even need to be a really complex question. It can be as simple as, let's take an adult service, for example, an elderly care home, and there's a member, an elderly person has been in a situation, and the family member who comes to visit them is quite disgruntled about it, doesn't think that it's been handled properly, and this, that, the other. How would you interact with that family member to resolve the situation? And it's just seeing where that conversation goes. Some people might be quite matter of fact and present, well, I'll show them that we've recorded everything and documented it, and it's all down on paper and it's all on the system, so we did deal with it properly. Another person might say, well, I sat them down, I did them a cup of tea, I asked them what their issue was, asked them what they wanted us to, what we could have done better, and got that feedback and built more of a rapport. Those answers are so different, but both will solve a problem. And it's just what works for you. Do you want someone who's kind of all about the black and white detail and we've got it on paper and the quality is important, or do you want someone that's going to nurture that family member, build a rapport, calm the situation down, and then back it up with the facts to say, look, I appreciate what you're not happy, etc., etc. it's just to see how someone responds to it. And there's a whole host of things you could throw into the mix. It's younger persons services, especially, it's a very emotive environment and often very challenging. So you could use a scenario where a staff member potentially has been in a challenging situation with a young person and has come out really distraught. How would you deal with that situation? And then you start to look at their management style and how they react in a crisis, and have they got the best interest of both parties at heart, the young person and the staff member, and how you start to understand how their mind works when it comes to resolving issues with external customers and your internal kind of stakeholders, so their team. So there's lots of questions you could ask.
Tells you far more about the person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And ultimately, what we're trying to find is the right fit, aren't we? Because some companies will, have an ethos or, a working methodology which will very much be about that process, but it's all got to be down to that culture. And so that's going to tell you how somebody's going to fit into that culture, whether they're, there's so much to take from that. Yeah.
In addition to that, if you are the hiring manager, it's listening to the answer that a candidate gives. So if they're answering and they're saying, well, I would do, or I would have done, I would then encourage any hiring manager to say, okay, and what did you do? And to kind of get those real life lived experiences, if they've got them. If it's someone stepping up to a managerial position, you ask them a competency-based interview around leadership, they might not have a real life scenario. But if you're recruiting somebody in a managerial post, but they're using, I think I would have done this, it would be a good idea to do this. Just probe that little bit further and say, can you give me a real life example when you have done that? And start to look for those, I did, this is how I resolved it. So you're getting those lived experiences rather than circumstantial. That's another really good tip for getting to the core of what somebody's about.
Yeah, that's a really important one, because the thing being, if you don't listen to that level of detail to what words are being used, what language is being used, you're making assumptions about what somebody's saying. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's hard sometimes, isn't it? Because candidates are very much, and I know I've done it. It's been a while since I've had an interview, but that I don't like talking about myself. So then you put me in a situation when I have to talk about myself. I always talk about we did, so it is teasing those things out and making sure that you've got
and not
that right
be
fit,
and encouraging your hiring managers to have the confidence to do that, because it is daunting. I've interviewed thousands of people, and sometimes it's so difficult to get the answers that you kind of are waiting for, without leading them down the path and kind of just dragging it out of them. So it's just training your hiring managers in interview skills and hiring skills and onboarding to know that it's okay to ask a question and just stop. So okay, that's a brilliant answer. Now, can you think of a time when you did that? And if they say, oh, well, I did do all of that. Oh, okay. Well, just talk me through it again and just see how they rephrase it. And in turn, you're giving that candidate more space and more confidence to talk about themselves without kind of just going, right, okay, and moving on. So you can come out of the interview thinking, I'm confident I've got everything I need from this person, and you can make a more informed decision on who really is the best fit. So that's why I say that there's a place for a blend of the two, that informal chat, because that warms everything up. Everyone's guard comes down a little bit, and then you go into the competency-based interviews and always explain to the candidate that that's what you're going to be doing. I'm going to be asking a series of competency-based questions. That means they will be situational based, etc., so that they're prepared and they know that they're going to be asked those kind of things. It just makes the whole experience more enjoyable on everyone's part, really.
Yeah. So there's a few things I'm hearing for there, kind of just to sum up that that sort of interview piece. That one, we've got to frame the interview in the right place. We've got to make sure our candidate is well prepared, that they know what kind of interview they're coming to. Two, we've got to remember it's their interview, not ours, and we need to stop talking sometimes, because we're all guilty of that sometimes. And as you say, fill in those silences, or we think we're giving the best opportunity, but actually the best opportunity is to give that space. And three, don't be afraid to ask the other question. So thankfully, we are a long way away from list of questions, and I must ask everybody the same question.
Yes.
You know, goodness me, let's not go back to those days. But it is asking that next question, because unless we ask that next question, we can't be actively listening to what that person's telling us and giving them the best opportunity.